Heads up, this is not an in-depth, nuanced critique of the Knuckles TV series. This is me ranting about a show I did not enjoy. If that's what you're here for, have fun. If not, you do you. The live-action Sonic franchise is a strange beast for me. I don't particularly love the films, but I don't particularly hate them either. They're quirky, silly, sometimes funny, and well-enough made films that manage to rise above the mire of cinematic video game adaptations. Both of them have their faults. Check out my Sonic and live action video for a full elaboration on my feelings of the first film, but ultimately, I'm tentatively excited to watch Shadow and Sonic make love in theaters this December.
If I need your body, I'll fuck it.
However, you can't have Sonic 3 without And Knuckles, and Knuckles, the Paramount Plus original series, has finally premiered to critical acclaim. And after one episode, I told myself I probably shouldn't watch any more of this. But then, a little voice deep inside called out over the apprehension and apathy and said, "Scott, give it a chance. You like the movies well enough." And if I ever find that voice, I'm going to smother it to death with a pillow. Because episode 1 was the best episode. I've heard a lot of people say that if you like the movies, you'll like the show. Set in the real world with a milquetoast human male co-lead with their own obnoxiously distracting plotline, a heavy focus on comedy, cartoonishly eccentric villains, and some references to the original game series sprinkled throughout. But while they both have the same fundamental approach to the material, one is significantly worse. The milquetoast human co-lead? No, he's now the main character. And his entire joke is that he's a sad, pathetic loser trying not to be a sad, pathetic loser. Also, he can win a bowling tournament. Knuckles has been downgraded to sidekick and is essentially a plot device, because every second on screen costs Paramount mad cheddar and they ain't the mouse. The obnoxiously distracting human plotline has now been upgraded to the main plotline, and they've tripled down on the quote-unquote comedy, but Jim ain't there to carry the script as Eggman, instead giving us the gun agents and the buyer. Insert invincible fraction of our power meme here. Comedy, of course, is subjective. One man's trash is another man's master emerald. But for me, Angel Island hit the ground episode 2. And I am not saying that there are no good jokes throughout the show's 8-episode run. Knuckles is still the funniest character in this universe by far, and Wade's mom is aggressively likable. But when you're sinking into a sea of mediocrity, a scant few bubbles of brilliance aren't enough to keep you from drowning. Because while it is still humorous to watch Knuckles adapting to new environments, with his malapropisms and stoic demeanor, his characterization is so two-dimensional that the whole shtick becomes repetitive and predictable. There are only so many times I can hear Knuckles repeat a mundane aspect of human culture as if it's something profound before the gag runs thin. Our main character, Wade Whipple, is well enough acted and arguably relatable, but his whole story about wanting to become a warrior and the journey there isn't funny enough to justify how low the stakes are, or compensate for how threadbare Knuckles' plotline is. I could see this as a moderately funny movie if it was entirely separate of the Sonic universe, but its constant juxtaposition with Knuckles, a literal alien creature with an insane backstory and a wealth of lore to pull from, constantly reminds you of the crushing mundanity of it all, and how many stories we could be telling instead of this one. And before you say,
"But Scott, why are you judging it based on what you want, instead of what you actually got? Why don't you judge it and the Sonic films as their own thing?"
Frankly, I've tried this entire time, including the movies, but inevitably, they remind me that these characters and their backstories are all infinitely more fascinating than what we're watching now. I've seen episode 4 being called the make or break episode for most people, and yeah, I'd say that's correct. It's the series at its most it. The entire rock opera segment will either be unbearable or an absolute riot depending on how you feel about Wade and his narrative. For me, all I could see was the series literally pantomiming a more interesting story. A lot of these problems could have been alleviated if the supporting cast were stronger, but besides Wade's mom, who I genuinely came to love, every other character is boring, mean, and/or obnoxious. Wade's sister is the most contemptible character I've ever seen in a piece of Sonic media. And while I totally understand that you're supposed to hate her, that just made me hate the scenes she was in. And the villains are so aggressively boring, they bury Knuckles' already emaciated plotline even deeper in the ground. Even Christopher Lloyd, yeah, he's in this, only has one genuinely funny scene. And to top it all off, literally and figuratively, they give Knuckles his hat. And the explanation is somehow even less emotionally resonant and profound than Sonic getting his iconic shoes from a little girl on a whim. And you know, thinking about it, That's actually a great encapsulation of my biggest issues with these live-action Sonic adaptations. They had Knuckles the Echidna, an insanely weird but beloved character from one of the biggest video game franchises of all time, with a backstory rich in possibilities for interesting and compelling plots, but instead of elaborating on and exploring any of those, they chose to give us the TED TV series, but significantly worse. Look, I fully understand why Knuckles is a secondary character in this, okay? Like I said before, his every second on screen is an underpaid, understaffed visual effects crew killing themselves and an air pump for the budget. So making a live-action series where he plays a more prominent role isn't exactly feasible. And one of the reasons they rely so hard on the comedy is because that's also cheaper and generally easier to accomplish, especially when dealing with average human suburbanite characters. When it comes to the what and the why, I completely understand the why. I just have no inclination anymore to enjoy the what. Because I don't give a shit about Wade Whipple's daddy issues or his cool mom, about these insanely boring gun agents, about Rory McCann in another wasted role, or Knuckles finding his home on Earth after undergoing the least compelling character development in the history of Sonic the Hedgehog. And again, I wouldn't mind so much if it were just funny. That was the deal, Paramount! We put up with the insufferable human nonsense as long as some of it is at least moderately funny, mostly Jim Carrey's Eggman, let's be frankly honest, and it doesn't take up a majority of the movie. Also, cool action sequences with the characters we do care about. And that isn't this. This isn't funny, exciting, heartwarming, or subversive. It's just kind of lame. I know, I should have more articulate and thoughtful extrapolations on the quality of the writing, acting, cinematography, etc. But at this point, you're either on board with the show or you're not. And to me, it's a boring, unfunny slog. It's a Knuckles TV series about some sad man-child with abandonment issues learning to be a better bowler so he can see his daddy again, with a side plot about a rejected Iron Man villain and Team Rocket via Men in Black but with negative charisma. Look, despite all of my bitching, I actually do understand why a lot of people are enjoying this show. It's quirky, weird, crazy, and overflowing with snark, one-liners, and relatable conflicts. Hell, I even understand how it could be emotionally resonant. The scene with Wade and his mom outside the hotel room is actually remarkably affecting. And to all of you who actually like the show and stuck it out with me to the end here, your resolve is remarkable, and I salute your patience. And truth be told, I do try and avoid being this negative nowadays. But I really wanted to get my honest feelings out on this one, even though I'm pretty sure nobody was asking for it. Guess after everything, I am a Sonic fan. Ultimately though, it's far from the worst show I've ever watched. I certainly don't hate it, despite my frustration and disappointment. And genuinely, if most people are enjoying it, that's cool. I'd rather a show people enjoy than when people don't. I've got plenty of other stuff to watch. But I do hope we get more shows in line with Sonic Prime in the future, that focus on the actual characters and their world, while telling more compelling and earnest stories. I mean with better pacing than Sonic Prime, but I'm not ready to fight that fight today.